Hey, welcome to the Monday night live stream on Monday morning. So, as you know, whenever I have a guest across the pond, we stream earlier in the day. So, I'm streaming at 11 a.m. So hopefully some folks find this and come over and say hi. I'd love to have you guys in the chat, join the conversation. And I did want to mention a few live streams that are coming up. I have to put on my goggles, as you know. Here we go. So next week, Lenny White is on the show, which is going to be amazing. Lenny is one of my early influences. I'm very excited to have him on the show. And by the way, I have to mention, I was just at the Chick Corea tribute at Jazz at Lincoln Center on Friday night. I saw my buddy Dave Weckl over there and got to talk to him at the end of the night. But the performances were amazing. And so in the drum chairs on Friday night were Steve Gadd, Antonio Sanchez, Dave Weckl, and Brian Blade. Not too shabby. And John Patitucci and Christian McBride. Herbie Hancock crashed the party, showed up and played. It was bananas. Just so many great jazz musicians. Renee Rosnes, who now I'm very aware of, who I wasn't before. And, man, it was just unbelievable. And Jeffrey Keyser, who's an incredible piano player, was playing a lot of the night. So really just amazing. Hopefully there'll be some video at some point, but I didn't see a camera crew. So I'm worried that they didn't even video that. And maybe that was the wishes of Chick's wife, Gail. I'm not sure, but it was an incredible night of music. Oh my goodness. Just wanted to share that with you. And then on the 9th, I have my friend Bob Caniglia from Black Magic Designs. So I'm doing some tech podcast this month, and today has a tech slant on it too. But Bob will be on with me from Black Magic Designs. We're going to talk about their camera switchers and their cameras. And as you know, I'm a big supporter and endorser of Black Magic Designs stuff. And they just interviewed me with Forbes magazine and Black Magic Designs. It was Black Magic Designs interview for Forbes. I was just a little part of that. So I was just kind of mentioned in there because I'm a big supporter. And then on the 16th, I have Sergio Bellotti, who's a great friend of mine, teacher at Berklee College of Music, great drummer, another southpaw, lefty drummer. And then Rick Drum will be on. We're doing some business consulting. And then my 100th episode on May 30th will be Dave Weckl, David Garibaldi, and Stanton Moore all in the same episode because those are the first three guys that I had on the show. So that's going to be pretty amazing. So just lots of great stuff coming up. And I do want to mention that on June 2nd, Klaus Hessler will be back on the show. I got to slow my roll. And so Klaus will be on. And it's always good having Klaus on the show. He's such a great educator and drummer and friend. And so that's coming up pretty soon. So let's get to today. So today I have a great drummer, educator, and also he's an app developer. And this guy, I've been following him for a while now because I think both he and I like going down the Vinnie Colaiuta rabbit hole. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But also he played in the David Cross Band, which is from King Crimson Hall of Fame musicians, and Wishbone Ash, and also Elena. And so he's done some writing and plays different instruments, but he's primarily a drummer. He's not on tour right now. He's got a new baby, which is pretty amazing, and an amazing app called Polynome. And we'll even talk about some of the earlier apps, Pyramid and Octopus Sequencer, which I was a huge fan of. So without any further ado, here is my guest for today, Joe Crabtree. Woohoo!
Hey, thank you for having me on.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
coming to you from, believe it or not, England. We just got our own Golden Gate Bridge built. But
Beautiful.
I don't know if you can see it finishes here.
Yeah, it just ends just near the corner of the room.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Actually, it's funny because I've been friends with this gentleman, Bob Caniglia from Black Magic Designs, and he's a big fan of using green screens on the Black Magic switchers, and he does a thing where he holds up a piece of green screen over his face so his head disappears, which I'd never seen that before, but it's pretty funny. But anyway, welcome to the show. So happy to have you on. I've been kind of following you for a bit, and I think the way I had found you is I was looking up Vinnie Colaiuta transcriptions, and you were breaking down, I think it was Gift Without Purchase, which was like a big band tune, or maybe you didn't do that one, but that was...
I don't think I've heard of that one.
Oh, okay. There's a big band track. I'll have to share that with you because it's a pretty amazing fill sequence that he does. But you were breaking down a fill sequence from something, and you had mentioned the record I think you mentioned this to me, the works
Mm-hmm.
from so and there's a song called Cowboys and Indians, and he does such a
Uh-huh.
beautiful fill on that, and so then I started talking about that Nick Kershaw album with every guest that I've had on. I've told them about that record, and I had Nate Morton on from The Voice, and he's a big Vinny fan, and he was like, "What? I've never heard of that." So I like played the tune, and I think that's how I became aware of that, is through you. So
Really?
just briefly, just down this sort of Vinny rabbit hole. So you're definitely a Vinny fan. So what brought you to start like transcribing that stuff or sharing it on your YouTube channel or your videos?
Well, so like my background in drumming was my teacher was a self-taught guy, a local guy, and he just had me playing to records. I'd go around his house, he'd stick like a Beatles record on, vinyl, and I'd play along to that. And so, I studied with him for, 18 months, and I'd just go and play along to Beatles and Barry White and all these these great records from like the 70s. And then I turned up early one day, and he was still finishing his dinner, and he said, "Just sit in there and watch this while I, while I wash the plates up." And he put on, I think it was The Next Step, Dave Weckl's Next Step.
Yeah.
And so I saw Weckl like playing drums in a way that I didn't know was possible, because I just knew that was like the extent of what I thought drumming was, and my jaw was on the floor. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. So I was probably like 13 or 14, and I just devoured all of these DCI music videos.
Yeah.
So I'd go to sleep with them on, hoping that I would, soak up some of this information. But what I found was, in the Next Step video, Dave had this whole thing where he's showing you the different groups of three, so right, left, kick, or left, right, kick, or kick, right, left, and all the different inversions as an exercise. And so I would work on those as exercises, but I never saw how he got those into the rest of what he did. It didn't sound like that's what he was playing. And so I started trying to figure out what he was playing in the solo. So he'd play a song on that, that VHS.
Yeah.
And he would do a fill in there. And I'm like, what is that? And so I figured out it was like a 6-stroke roll with a foot in there, or it was, some kind of sticking that I would start to notice. Once I'd heard it, it felt like it was learning another language. It's like, oh, he's doing that thing again. And then I was like, that's that Weckl sticking lick that he, My background wasn't rudimental. It wasn't learning paradiddle diddles and that kind of stuff. It was kind of not present. So I figured out what he was doing without realizing where it came from. But then that's how my kind of YouTube videos came about, because I was basically explaining the stuff that I was discovering from the Weckl videos that he wasn't explaining. It was like the bit between, here's the basic exercise, and then, well, here's the lick that he played I figured out. So I was kind of like this interpreter, I guess, of like, here's something that I've figured out that I think is really cool, and here's what I struggled with when I was learning to play it, and here's how you can do it.
Yeah, it's like bridging the gap between a simple exercise and then the musical application of it. So you're kind of bridging the gap. Yeah, that's amazing.
Because I guess, you see, like, there's different levels. Like, Vinny is, like, way at the top of the mountain. That's just, like, unreachable. And, like, right down at the bottom is me and everyone else. And I'm just, like, a little bit higher up than someone who's kind of starting out. But I can kind of interpret certain things. I can go, like, hey, well, this is this thing that he does. I suppose it happens a lot in, like, gospel drumming and church stuff, where guys are getting together and sharing specific licks, but I didn't have like a drummer that I was hanging out with. It was mainly kind of me. Like, the other drummers that I knew were people that I was teaching.
Right.
So like with guitar, I played guitar, and I had a guitarist friend who was at a similar level, and he'd come over and we would like show each other licks that we learned. But with the drumming thing, it was either stuff that I learned directly from a video or something that I'd figured out. Because, I could make a video that's an hour long, breaking down one Weckl lick, and like, here's how to do it, here's how to make it easy to play. And he fits so much into what, like an 80-minute like VHS tape just covered so much ground, but obviously you can't break down every single lick.
Right.
But with YouTube, where you can just put as much content as you want up there, it's like, okay, let's spend 40 minutes on this lick and 40 minutes on this lick.
Yeah, and now, I mean, the crazy thing is now he's got, for the last bunch of years, he has a school where he's breaking down in more detail stuff. But there's still, a bridge to be, a gap to be bridged, even with that. Although he does live streams now on Sundays when he's not touring, and he's breaking down stuff pretty intensely, but we need guys like yourself who are sort of breaking it down into manageable chunks, and then also, finding, like I'm a big proponent of doing sort of little muscle memory exercise that teaches you part of a movement, and then another little piece of it, and then starting to put those together. So, very cool. So, and you also have, we may as well, we're going to go back, but we may as well mention now, you also have an online lesson platform, right? So
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So,
to be honest, when I started, I think the very first YouTube video I put up, I'd seen, this is how it works, right? Because quite often people get put off from doing something because they think ahead and they go, oh, well, I couldn't possibly do that. This is too much work, like the idea of putting out hundreds of videos and having to make those videos when you don't know anything about video production or mixing or any of that kind of stuff. Usually when I've got into something, it's because I've seen somebody do it worse. I've seen somebody do a version and thought, well, I could do that at least, so why not have a go? And with drum videos, I'd seen a bass. It was a guitarist who did a bass tuition video that my housemate was watching, and it was a DVD that my housemate had bought on eBay. And he had a website. It was banburyguitar.co.uk or something. And there was this guy, and he was so awful. He was so bad at playing bass that he demonstrated a flea bass line from something, and he got one of his students to play it because he couldn't play it. And I thought, well, I can do better than that. Right. So I had this idea. I'd worked out an El Negro thing from one of the Modern Drummer festivals where he plays like a left foot clave on a cowbell, and then he's got like 6 different cowbells around, and he plays this orchestrated thing that's awesome that I'd worked out. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make a video about that. And my very first one, which I think is still on YouTube somewhere, I'd kind of scripted it out, and I did all the scripted bits to camera first, like really so dry and stale, and then played the examples, and I was recording on video cameras with tape. So it was like 4 video cameras rolling, recording the audio into Cubase. And then when I was done, I had to, in real time, play the videos back to record them over Firewire into the app. So if I had like 30 minutes of material and I had 4 cameras, that's 2 hours of just waiting for the material to get onto the computer.
Yeah.
Then mix the audio in Cubase and mute my voice every time I'm playing the drums and put this thing together. And I thought, I'll sell this. but then I realized there's no audience. Nobody knows things exist. So I just put it on YouTube, and then I just started putting free videos on YouTube and enjoying that people were getting something out of that.
Right.
And then later on, I started doing more long form videos that are like the 45-minute to an hour long lessons covering a whole bunch of topics. And that was more like if somebody came for a private lesson, I would dive really deeply into a specific topic.
Right.
And so I would put one of those out every week. And I did that for maybe 5 years or something. And I recently moved all of that to Teachable, which is the same platform that Dave Weckle's on.
Yes.
Just so it wouldn't get lost, because my original website was going to be like a security hazard. I think the web company changed the version of PHP and it was not going to load anymore. So I just moved all of the lessons across. And they are there at joecrabtree.com for anybody who wants to check them out.
And on Teachable, is it a subscription type platform?
Yeah, so there's a subscription for that, and it used to be that if you sign up to my website, you would get the first lesson I'd recorded, and the next week you'd get the next lesson, and the week after you'd get the next lesson. And when I moved it across, I just thought, whatever, if you subscribe, you can get access to everything. So there's something like 230 lessons covering a wide range of topics. Nice. And it's just me. So really what it comes down to is if you like the way I teach and the way I break things down, then you'll like my lessons. But if you don't, you won't.
Nice.
But there is I think there's a free trial on there, or there's a like 30-day money back guarantee. So
Nice.
if anybody wants to check it out, go and take a look, and
Yeah.
I won't
And
be offended if it's not for you.
I put the links to all of your stuff in the description of this video. So anybody that wants to check out what Joe's all about, all the links are in the description. So go click over there, check it out. Teachable is a great platform for that. I am building some coursework on Teachable at the moment as well, for my book Filling in the Grooves and my hand technique workshop and all this stuff. So yeah, putting it together on the same platform. Great platform. Cool. So just as far as the history, your history, I mean, you started really young. You were playing piano at 5 years old, I believe, right? And
Yeah.
so the beginnings of your musical endeavors were at the piano. So as a 5-year-old, most 5-year-olds, they're either going to hate it or they love it. But how is that for you when you took to the piano? Was it something you loved as a kid, or was it something that was a chore?
I hated it. I mean, that's what you probably, I guess that's on a bio somewhere, right? Started playing the piano at 5 years old, it makes me sound like some kind of like musical prodigy.
Right.
Actually, my parents forced me to have piano lessons. I used to be sent to the room with the piano with a kitchen timer with 20 minutes on it.
Yeah.
Go and do your piano practice. And I would leave the room and I would stop it and set it for 10 minutes as if my mum didn't know like how long 20 minutes was. I'd come back and it'd be beeping like, look, I did my 20 minutes.
That's great.
And they said to me, you can quit when you're 10. So I did 5 years of piano lessons.
Wow.
I mean, I learned the basics of reading music, which I'm still bad at, but it was a good foundation to understand other things later on. I think if I'd started on drums and then tried to learn any kind of music theory later on, I don't know. It was. I'm glad that I did it.
Yeah.
But when I was 16 and there were people at school who were great, really good on the piano, and I had quit 6 years ago, that was when I wish I'd continued. But I got into drums and guitar and other things.
That's always the case, though, with I find especially with piano lessons with younger ones, like even my daughter who looks back and goes, "Why didn't you make me keep playing?" And I was like, because all you did was complain. You didn't want to play. So finally we let you out of it. So, and she's like, "Oh, I wish I had continued." That seems to be everybody's
always
story.
in the future, right? You're like, "Oh, I wish I was great at this." Of course you do,
Yeah.
but it's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I've tried to get back into piano and learn some blues stuff and tried to get into some music theory and things, but it's hard. And I know, like, you have more time when you're a kid.
Yeah.
If there's one piece of advice I could give, it would be to make it easy for yourself to practice, which is harder with the drums. But I had guitar lessons for a long time, and I didn't make that much, I enjoyed it, but I didn't do a lot of practice in the week. And when I quit my guitar lesson, I think my guitar teacher fired me because I said, "I don't want to learn what you're teaching me. I want to learn this." And he was like, "Well, I'm not going to teach you that." So I just kind of left.
Right.
I think I was 14. And I think I wanted to learn sweep picking. I was like, I'd heard of sweep picking. So I called him up and said, "Will you teach me sweep picking?" And he said, "I've got a waiting list." So I just started, again, watching DCI video. It was VHS. There was no internet at the time.
Right.
Watching videos and getting tab books and learning things. And my kind of learning curve, I don't know if there's a reverse, but basically I just got so much better in such a short period of time. And the only reason was I didn't have to put my guitar in a case to take it to my guitar lesson, which meant that I didn't have to take it out of a case in order to play it. It was just on a stand in my room. So it was easy to just pick it up, even for 20 seconds, and do something and then put it back on the stand. Whereas before, it used to just stay in the case for a week because I never could be bothered to take it out. So if there's an instrument there and you can force yourself to just pick it up, even for a second, I think with the piano they say, or writing, they just say, put your fingers on the keys. Because if you can get that far, it's likely that you'll probably end up doing more. But if you kind of go, "I don't feel like doing it," like that's no excuse, because nobody feels like doing things all the time. So the only real discipline is to get to your instrument and sit there for 2 minutes.
Right.
And that can be all it takes to kind of set this ramp going where suddenly you get really inspired and you want to do it.
Yeah. That's such an amazing thing, with everything in life. If you make it easy, you're more likely to do it. You think about probably all the millions of people that own gym memberships that never go because it's just too much of a pain to get in the car and go to the gym. So that's funny. So at what point did you, I know you got a drum set for Christmas at some point, but at what point did you go, or what was the seed that planted the idea of like, oh, wait, I want to do drums? When did that happen, or what was the one thing that drew you in?
Well, I'm told that my brother wanted to drum before I did. I don't remember this, but he would have been, I got a drum kit when I was 11. And so before that, my brother had two plastic red drumsticks with cables off the back that went into a little belt pack, and it had like crappy electric drum noises, so it was like a fun kid's toy.
Like an air
and
drumming?
I remember, sorry?
He could air drum and it would
No,
make
you
sounds?
had to hit a surface.
Oh, okay.
So it had like a, some kind of pickup in there.
Yeah.
But I remember setting out plastic dustbin lids on my bed and like pillows and things, turning the volume off because the sounds are crap. I just wanted to like hit things. It was fun. And what really inspired me was kind of Phil Collins in the sort of Peter Gabriel solo era, where it was, once he'd got to the big Tom Phil type things, that was what really got me. Like tribal tom grooves is what made me want to drum. I was so excited by that. So I asked of that, and funnily enough, New Kids on the Block.
Okay.
Like those do, any kind of like tom sounds that just really excited me. And so I asked for a drum kit for Christmas. And I said, not an electric kit, because I'd looked in like catalogs where you would see just, 4 pads on a little Yamaha thing. And I wanted real drums. So I never in a million years expected that I would actually get a drum kit. And I found it maybe 2 weeks before Christmas. I went into the spare room and there was something under a sheet. And I'm like, what is that? And I had a peek and it was drums. And I was so excited.
Oh my God.
And then on Christmas Day, I felt really ill and I had to kind of feign surprise and excitement. But I was like, in love with the drums.
Oh man.
And then I hit them and I was like, that doesn't sound like New Kids on the Block. And my drum teacher said, oh, it's electric drums you're talking about.
Oh, that's so funny.
I didn't like how the drums sounded for a long time. Even now, I really like close mic'd drums going through a good PA system. Or drums in a good room. And it's amazing how you do a lot of gigs and you're setting up and you sound check, and sometimes you hit the snare and you're like, man, this is shit. I feel like I'm playing like terribly. Everything's awful. And then in another room, you hit the snare and it just sounds amazing and you just want to play.
You know what's
I think
funny?
for a beginner, it's such a strange thing to understand that the room that you're in is as much of the sound as the drums that you've got. It doesn't matter how expensive.
Yeah. I remember feeling the same way as a kid with a new drum set, but my mother made me wear earplugs at a very young age, and so I always found that the earplugs it was filtering out a lot of the highs and mids that were sort of making it sound trashy in the basement, untreated cement basement. That the headphones, either headphones or earplugs, made the drum sound better.
Yeah.
So I remember
it made the toms sound better.
Made the toms sound so much better, and the bass drum sounded bigger.
Yeah.
And I remember a neighbor had those the headphones that were the pilots, not the pilots, the people that worked at the airport wore.
Oh, I know what you mean.
Ear protection, right? So those orange American airline headset that I got, and I used to wear that because it was filtering out a lot of sound. But I found that wearing those would make the drums sound better, so I got really excited about that. So, yeah. And then, of course, close micing the drums and wearing, good headphones is like, now it sounds really
That's
good.
like pro level. I would never have done that if it weren't for it being my job. It's a lot to do. But I'm thankful to Greg Bissonette for, on his private lesson video, having a whole thing where he steps away from the drums and he's like, don't do drugs, get business cards printed, and wear earplugs.
Yeah.
And, I was an influenceable kid.
Gotcha.
So I got business cards printed, and I didn't do drugs, and I got some earplugs. And,
see that?
I probably wouldn't have very good hearing if it weren't for him, doing that on that video.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah, it's really funny. You don't hear that mentioned on many instructional videos. By the way, I just wanted to mention, because we were talking about DCI and all these videos, I had Adam Deitch on last week, and we were talking about the Dennis Chambers video, which is such a great video. He's wearing the white Adidas and the baseball cap, and just tearing it up. And I remember seeing that when I first saw that. First of all, the groove was just incredible coming out of him, but also his chops are so ridiculous. And so just remember watching his single stroke rolls around the kit, sort of like Billy Cobham-esque single strokes, and just going like, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do that. But those videos were really so influential, right?
Yeah.
All that TCI stuff. Thank you, Rob Wallace, for having the insight,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
With the Dennis one, I remember not liking the Dennis one as much because they were like interviewing him and stuff, and I just wanted the playing.
Yeah.
And the Weckl one, I mean, Weckl's one and Bissonet's one, like both of those, they took so much creative kind of control over that. I think Weckl told me that his whole master plan package was his attempt to get a record deal. He was like, I'm just going to put everything together and do it. And he did such an amazing job with it. I mean, those guys were so far out the park, because when it got easier to make videos, you started getting some coming in that were like, these guys really shouldn't be making I shouldn't really be making videos on that kind of level, But I mean, the Weckl one and the Dennis Chambers and the Greg Bissonette and the Omar Hakim one, I really like that.
Yeah.
Peter Erskine one. But yeah, the Dennis one, there's so many. I've stolen so much stuff from all of those guys, which I'm sure everybody has. Like, they're so influential. But as a tangent, I told you I'd talk a lot. As a tangent, I think it's funny that like the kind of meme of drum ideas. Like, everybody knows the Pat Boone, Debbie Boone fill, right? Because it's like, it's a good sounding fill, and you think, well, I'll use that. And some of the things that I've stolen from Dennis Chambers, my favorite things that I've heard, because you'll hear a solo performance of him playing, and it's like the falling down the stairs, and then he'll go into a groove, or he'll go into some really like cool lick, and then it's the other crazy stuff that nobody can play again. But there were two things that he did that I can't really explain what they were, but there were the two things that I stole from him that I thought were amazing. And I don't know, many years after I'd figured them out, I saw a clip from a clinic that he did that was maybe at a drum shop or something. It was nothing that was really like put out there. And he was talking about some of his favorite things. And it was the two things that I'd stolen. And he said, I stole this from this guy and I stole this from this guy. And he just put his own slant on it. But I just love how things just get spread around like that, because there's something in them that's so like magical. So, you steal it and you make it your own, but it's still so like memorable and catchy. It's like a virus.
Yeah.
But
Isn't
that's
it amazing?
happened a lot.
Imagine taking one of those ideas and then tracing it, like Dennis saying that he stole it from this guy, and then finding a thing, obviously there's no film after a while, but finding the guy that he stole it from, and then he's saying, oh, I took that from this guy, and tracing the roots of it. I mean, it's almost like taking sort of Bucket of Fish and seeing Max do it in Blues for Big Sid, and then going like, oh, so he was doing doodle-doom, doodle-doom early.
Yeah.
And then, seeing what Bonham did with it, and then tracing kind of, that whole lineage,
I wish I could remember the name of the drummer. Jonathan Mover was showing me this. The Bonham stuff, you sort of associate Bonham with the big drum sound.
Right.
And the, biggity, those kind of fills and things like that. Certain things that are really like, that's Bonham's signature. And Mover played me some stuff from I think it was a British big band drummer who was basically, you listen to it and you're like, that's where Bonham got it from. It was like the big drums and the same kind of things. And it's like, everything's, and then you look at some of the Zeppelin songs that like basically direct ripoffs of blues songs that were already in existence. And it's like, you see, I think there's a YouTube video somewhere, like everything's a mashup, where it just shows how everybody's stolen from everyone else. And it's wonderful. And now you get court cases where people are trying to like put IP on like, well, you stole that song idea from me. And well, probably not.
Right.
Like, why would you?
Yeah, I think, where it becomes sort of the gray area of all that is where there's signature grooves that have really set a tune in motion, the James Brown stuff. And those drummers that weren't really getting they were making $11 for the session, and then didn't really get any monetary gain from that over their lifetime, but it got sampled 3 million times on every
Yeah.
hip hop record, that's kind of when you feel a little bit for those guys because, they really changed the landscape of drumming. And then, but I mean, as far as the credit that's due, every drummer on the planet will pay homage to those guys. And like I had James Gadsden on the show, and think about the grooves that he put down that have become legendary and, of course, sampled over and over and over and over. But everybody really has in their hearts really feel something for what those guys put out,
Yeah.
I don't know. That's going down a whole nother path.
Yeah. Sorry, I told you I'd go off on tangents.
No, but that's
Let's
great.
get back on track.
And by the way, I mean, with Bonham, I just love certain things that he does in grooves that are, there's of course the Big Phil stuff, right? But think of like the Immigrant Song. There's like no fills, right?
Yeah.
There's pickup notes, right? So like little tiny things. But in particular, Zeppelin 3, I'm going to forget the song now. On Zeppelin 3, what is the one? It's got some little odd time stuff in it. Why am I forgetting? But there's some great groove stuff where it's little groove fills that I love. So sometimes those little details,
Yeah, I mean, I love Bonham. I'm like, a huge Bonham fan.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that, he's amazing. It was just that I associated all this stuff as being like, he was the first guy to just have that exact drum sound and do these things. And it was like interesting to hear what probably his influences were.
Yeah.
But he had such an amazing feel and like it just seemed to play the perfect thing for every song,
And he swings he swung so hard, even on things that were sort of in the straight, area. There's a lilt, there's a swing to it.
Amazing. And
Out on the Tiles was the song.
I don't know if I know that one. I'm like it's so bad. I basically know Houses of the Holy and remasters Zeppelin albums because that was what my dad had on CD. And so there's a whole bunch of Zeppelin things that I've never even listened to.
Listen to Out on the Tiles just for the groove construct is really interesting.
Okay.
Yeah. So
it's on my to-do list.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man. So, by the way, that first drum teacher, he's not the guy that Alan White also studied with. And
no.
That was
he was
later.
Like a local.
He was a local guy. Yeah.
I studied with. I think you're thinking of Steve White, maybe, because I did. So I basically studied with this local guy for a few years, and then he said, "There's nothing else I can teach you," because I was taking the DCI videos and working all this stuff out, and then coming and asking him, like, questions that he didn't have answers to.
Yeah.
And so he kind of like said, "I think you need to go and study with someone else." Then I studied with another local guy who was a trumpet teacher and would teach me to read snare music because I'd had piano lessons. My first drum teacher didn't believe in reading drum music. He was like, "Oh, you don't need that." So I wanted to then learn this. So I went to another guy and he was explaining things to me. And I just didn't understand why you would have like a half note in drum music. I'm like, you hit a snare drum. What does it mean to have a half note versus a quarter note? So I had a lot of things to learn. And then he sent me on my merry way when I asked how to play a quintuplet, like, what's a quintuplet? And he'd never come across that, and I got the Gary Shafee books and things.
But back to the trumpet player, I mean, that's a good guy to study with just as far as understanding interpretation, because when we see a half note, if it's written in sort of like a big band chart where we're interpreting, or it doesn't have to be a big band chart, but, that kind of interpretation, I would think a brass player would be a great person to study with to get some of that. Because I studied with a sax player at Jazzmobile in New York City, and that was really, really helpful. John Stubblefield, the sax player, and he was talking about interpreting for drummers, so that's pretty cool that you did that.
Well, it would have been. I think I was still only 14, and all we did was play on a practice pad. He didn't have a kit at his house, so it was literally just reading, snare etudes and things like that. So he gave me some. He helped me with reading rhythms and things like that. And then I stopped studying with him, just figured out my own stuff for a while, and started teaching when I was like 15 because I was like the best guy in the area sort of thing. So it was strange, like I'm 15 and there's like a 40-year-old coming around for drum lessons, and
I did the same
this constant stream of people. Yeah.
Because you know what I would do is I would take my drum lesson and then I would immediately teach kids in the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And what it did was it reinforced everything that I was learning in my drum lesson. So I would learn a passage from Ted Reed Syncopation, and then I would teach syncopation to these other two kids in the neighborhood. So that's smart. I mean, that's a really good thing that you did.
And you figure so much out when you have to teach other people.
Yeah.
Because you realize, like, oh, I don't... Another example, I'll try and make this a short one. Out of interest, I once set up a kit left-handed, like full lefty, so left foot playing the bass drum, right foot playing the hi-hat. And I just went to play grooves that I knew. And one of the ones I tried to play was Sissy Strut. And I'm like, well, I know how to play this right-handed.
Yeah.
So let's see if I can play it lefty. And I couldn't figure out how to get the hi-hat to do a short, or, you know, it's like you got the short like barks, and then you've got some long ones.
Right.
And I couldn't do it. And I didn't know how to do that. And I ended up having to set the kit up the normal way around, play the groove, and watch my left leg to see what it did to make, you know, to get those open hi-hats. And I was like, oh, so when I'm doing the long ones, I'm heel down, and when I'm doing the short ones, I'm heel up.
Right.
I didn't know that that's what my body did, and I had to watch it to learn and then apply that. So that really highlighted for me, if you're teaching a beginner student, you can be saying, no, play it on the ride. And they're like, yeah, I am. And they might not know what the ride symbol is because you never told them. It's just you assume that knowledge.
Right.
And they're thinking that play it on the ride means something that, you know, that
watch
they just got my left leg to see what it did.
Sorry about that.
Oh, that was weird.
I was checking the stream just to make sure that we're good, and I accidentally opened up the Facebook stream. That's pretty funny. All right, go ahead. Sorry.
But you know, the kind of miscommunication, like my first drum kit when I set it up and I moved it from one location to another, I didn't know which way up the snare drum went. And I didn't know which way around the toms were supposed to go because they're the opposite to a piano. You know, on a piano, the higher notes are on the right-hand side. So all of these things that just, when you're a drummer and you've been playing for a while, it's common sense. When you start out, you have no idea.
Right.
So that was really interesting to me that I could not know how I played something without watching myself do it.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. I mean, actually, I think that little strategy of recording yourself and kind of seeing what you do, because sometimes things will come out that are spontaneous that you're like,
yeah,
what the heck did I play over there? What was that thing? And then you actually have to figure it out. But that's interesting. Yeah. Oh, very cool.
Anyway, sorry, that was sidetracking. Now I can't forget what we were talking about.
That's okay. So
drum lessons.
But drum lessons.
Yeah, I did study with a guy called Bob Armstrong down in London.
Right.
And he taught Steve White and Andy Gangadine and some other guys. And he was known as the like technique guy. And so that was another eye opener for me because I'd watched the Weckl videos and I'd watched, you know, Weckl say like, oh, you want to have like loose grip and all these sort of things. So I'd interpreted that in my own way, and I had a way that I would play. And I went to this guy, and he had me play quarter notes on the ride cymbal, and he would say, like, well, what is the stick doing, like, in between these things? I'm like, oh, I'm getting my fingers out the way. And he kind of said, well, where's the stick? How do you know where the stick is? And kind of asked all these questions that I didn't have answers for. And I realized, wow, there's loads of holes in my knowledge, and I really don't know what I'm doing. And he, for like weeks, like all we did was play quarter notes on the ride, or then like sticking some skip notes in there and doing other things. And he had this kind of magical way of being able to like come behind you and grab your wrist and move your wrist. And when he did it, it was like, oh, that feels really good. And then he'd let go and he'd be like, it didn't, you know.
Right.
And he could just do that. And so I learned a lot from studying with him.
It's amazing how many, you know, especially with the old school teachers where, you know, the stories that you get are, yep, he kept me on a practice pad playing single strokes for 7 months, you know, where it's just like, you know, really honing in just that one thing, you know, the Morellos and Chapins and, you know, the really early godfathers of like technique. My eyes got open to this stuff from Don Famularo, going to him and studying. But it's really interesting. I took some lessons with Victor Lewis from Miles Davis fame, right? So
Mm-hmm.
he came to the house and taught me, and that's all we did was play quarter notes on the ride cymbal. And it was really eye-opening because I was like, oh, quarter notes on the ride cymbal, I could do that. But then the way he got me to open up my hand and to allow the stick to rebound was different, and to how to listen to that. And that's all we ever did for the little bit of time that I studied with him. But it was really eye-opening.
Yeah. All those levels of like, I don't think I'd ever really thought about what sound I was making. Like what sound am I getting out of the drums? Because it doesn't feel like there will be anything other than the sound that you're getting, right? And then you hear, oh, well, a different stick makes a different sound. And if you hold the stick in a different way, it makes a different sound. And then the dynamics and the balance of different voices on the kit and things that you could never teach that. If you went for a drum lesson and the drum teacher tried to talk about like the volume of the hi-hat versus the bass drum versus the snare drum and different levels of, you know, snare drum volumes for ghost notes and things and all this stuff, that you not ever do anything. So you've got to learn that stuff later.
Yeah.
But it just goes on and on and on, and there's always more. There's always more to learn and more to know, you know.
That's true. I think, you know, every drummer that I've spoken to, you know, and even the most famous guys, they're always constant students of the instrument through life. You know, talking to Billy Cobham, and he's like, yeah, I'm still working on things, still learning things, you know, and we're like, wow, like he's still working at it, you know. I remember Dom Famularo saying that he went to, you know, see Jim Chapin in the hospital. He was getting close to the end of his life, and Jim was sitting in bed in the hospital practicing on his practice pad. And Dom was like, Jim, what are you doing? And he's like, I think my left hand is getting better, you know. And he's like, you know, getting way up there in age and close to the end of his life, and he's still working at his left hand. So going through, you know, the sort of process, finding teachers and trying to elevate your level. And I think you, in your story, you kind of did some professional gigs, maybe paying type gigs in your teens. And like for me, it was sort of, you know, doing theater kind of gigs. I was getting into that kind of stuff, playing in bands, doing theater work, doing like, you know, cabaret kind of stuff or dinner theater stuff. For you, what was the beginnings of the gigs? Those kind of things, or?
No, more pub gigs and playing soul classics, you know, 60s, 70s, basically. Nice. I mean, there was an original band that I played with, and the guys were all like a few years older than me, which was a massive difference at that time. You know, my mum would drive me to rehearsals, and and then the keyboard player in that band, I think it must have been when I could drive, so I would have been 17. And I'd done a few gigs with my school band before that, where our parents would drive us down to the pub and we'd set up and, you know, we'd play sort of top 40 stuff of the time, and it was fun. And then, the keyboard player from this other original band called me up one day and he said, oh, can you play with us? We've got a gig tomorrow night. It's at this pub and you'll be fine. So I said, okay. So I didn't have any cases for my drums, I think. And it was the first time I was really going out to do a gig. So I just threw my kit in the car, drove down there. They sent me a CD actually to listen to of their versions of songs, because they played different versions. They played I Feel Good and played it, the stabs were completely different. So it was good that I listened to that. But then there were a lot of songs that we were playing and the keyboard player was like, I'll cue you. So I'm looking at him and we're playing River Deep Mountain High, you know, and it's got all of those like different stops and things in, and he's just trying to like mime to me and I'm winging it. And I think a lot of those soul classics that we would play, I never actually heard the original versions until many years later. And some of them, it was comical how differently I played. But nobody else cares. Like in the audience, as long as there's a backbeat, nobody cares what the drummer's doing.
Right.
Even the drummers, you know, if like you're playing something different, they just think you were doing it on purpose. So as long as you stop in the right place, you know, I think it's fine. So that was basically my weekends was playing classic soul music, basically. Oh, nice. And then other function bands where we'd play 60s, 70s, 80s stuff for weddings and what have you.
Very cool. And you know what? It just reminds me, we should definitely just say hello in the chat. There's a few people in the chat, so I want to say hello real quick. and just make sure that we don't forget anybody. But for those of you that are hanging in the chat, let's say hi. So Christopher Simpson was the first one in this morning. I'm not sure what time you popped in, so sorry. I usually try to, at 30 minutes in, just say hello in the chat. But Christopher Simpson saying good morning. Larry Rizzo saying good morning. Let's see. Peter Retzlaff, great drummer and educator here in New York City, and also the author of Baby Steps to Giant Steps, which is a great jazz book, play along book, exercise book, interpretation book. It's really very cool. I use it with all my students. And Greg Reeves from Australia hanging with us. Hey, Greg.
Awesome.
Greg and I played together in a group called Cavers. From basically the singer and himself were from Australia and came here to the States in the 90s. And my good buddy Rob Glick and I were sort of a bass and drum duo that we would play together with different songwriters, and we met Greg and Lisa from Cavers and had that band together. So we've played a bunch of different rooms, and one of them being the famous CBGB's in New York City, which doesn't exist anymore. But we found the recordings recently from CBGB's, and they're actually really good. It was kind of fun to hear those. And Don O'Keefe hanging with us. Don, how you doing? He's a drummer and educator in Connecticut. So good to see you all hanging with us. If you have any questions for Joe, please, fire away. And somebody mentioned, and maybe that part of the chat didn't pull in, but somebody had mentioned that they love your app, by the way.
Thank you.
Talking about Polynome, and we're going to get into the apps shortly. But very cool for everybody to hang out. And please do ask questions if you have any questions coming up. So we'll jump back into our story. And hopefully we get some questions soon. Usually some of my students will have questions, but again, we're streaming early today, so they may have forgotten that we're on early. But very cool. So it's funny, what was your very first gig, even if it was non-paying, whatever it was? What was your very first one?
It would have been a jam night, because I remember I had a band, like the very first playing with anyone else really was just a guitarist friend from school, and we'd play like Enter Sandman and stuff like that, and try and do like recordings of those things. And then a friend of my dad's, they had like a little studio that they'd built above a shop. He had a TV shop. He built a little studio, and his son, who was probably 17 and I would have been 14, 15, and he was a really good guitarist, could sing like John Lennon, and was really into the Beatles. And
oh, wow.
My dad said, do you want to go over and jam with these guys? And I said no, I was just too afraid of the idea. And then a year later, he didn't push it, and a year later he kind of mentioned it again, and I said okay. So I went over there, and Bobby Elliott, the drummer from the Hollies, was like a local guy, and he was there kind of like hanging out. And so that was kind of fun. And I played with these guys, and they're all really like, supportive, and it was fun. And then the younger brother of the bass player in that band had a band, and they were looking for a drummer. So I ended up in this kind of 3-piece band where we would play like Poison and David Lee Roth songs, and like basically stuff that I liked the drummers on. So it's like, let's play this David Lee Roth song, or this Sting song, or this whatever.
Nice.
And then they would do jam nights, and they said, come down to a jam night. And that was another thing that was just frightening the life out of me, the idea of doing that. But eventually I went down to one and kind of got into that scene.
Nice.
And then I think the first real gigs were like putting them on at school in the lunchtime, close all the curtains in the school hall and rock out for an hour. That's the only gig that I've played, by the way, that anybody has stage dived at. I have a video of me playing drums, playing Black Hole Sun, and my friend did some backing vocals and ripped his shirt off and stage dived.
Did they catch him?
They did catch him. It's amazing. And then we weren't allowed to do that again.
Wow. Oh my goodness. That's very cool. Yeah, in high school, I had a heavy metal band, which was an original metal band, and we were playing the local metal scene clubs. And I remember, I forget who I was telling this to on the podcast, but I was the only drummer that played Lemoore. Lemoore was like the big metal club in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And so I think we were opening for Carnivore, who at the time was big, and Carnivore was Peter Steele became the singer for Typo Negative.
Okay.
And it was his first band. So Carnivore was like a thrash metal group, and we were opening for them. But I think I was the only one to ever have like a red Sparkle Ludwig kit with a vibraphone on stage at a metal club, because it was sort of progressive-ish metal, and I had a vibraphone part in one song, but I had a White Marine Pearl Jenko vibraphone on stage that I played that one part in. Very silly, but I was very influenced by Neil Peart at the time, playing in a metal band, but still wanted to play progressive, music. So,
yeah.
Oh man, so and then for college, you studied. Did you study physics?
Yeah.
So how did you pivot, or was that just part of, you just figured I'm going to study something so that there's something to fall back on? Or because in high school, you were definitely drumming minded in high school, right?
Yeah, I wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah.
But, finished school, it's like, okay, I was good at maths and physics and the kind of sciencey things. I've got like an engineer's kind of brain.
Yeah.
And I think my parents were like, you should go get a degree and then, like you say, you've got something to fall back on and then do whatever you want. So my plan was go and do that, get a degree, and then move to London and be a drummer. That's what I wanted to do. And I met a lot of really great musicians at university and spent most of my time playing music. I joined a big band there. We had an originals band, and the two guys in that were great songwriters. One of them ended up writing some hits for Ellie Goulding, and I don't know if she's made it into the States or not, but he's had some '1 hits with her. The sax player in that band ended up being the president of Warner Brothers Records.
Oh my goodness.
Really crazily, overachievers. The singer in the band written a few movies and TV shows, and I don't know, everybody seemed to do really well.
Wow.
But yeah, really great meeting all those musicians. So all my friends were musicians, and the physics thing was just get that done. But I was forced to do a computer programming class, which I hated, but gave me a foundation. Like the piano lessons that I hated gave me a foundation for music, the programming class that I hated gave me a foundation for doing that later on. So it was useful.
Oh, wow. And also, I understand that your dad is big in the audio game. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had a company. Well, so in his attic when he was, I don't know, in his 20s or whatever, he worked for a company called Lucas Aerospace that made things for airplanes.
Right.
And it was when semiconductors were just appearing in the world. And he was, really into music, had his own little band and things, built his own little keyboard and stuff like that. And he made one of the first digital reverbs, so the RMX-16, which is still used in a lot of studio productions and things. And it's basically the sound of the 80s. It's Phil Collins' drum sound. Everybody talks about how the Phil Collins In the Air Tonight was to do with an open mic on a desk and a lot of gain on it and all that kind of thing. But then he bought one of these units and they put in a patch that basically sounded like that. So that's what's on all these records. Wow. So the whole of Peter Gabriel's So, for example, is this unit. A reverb unit is the sound of the record. And When the Doves Cry, the Prince song, doesn't have any bass on it because the bass drum sample along with this preset on this reverb unit was enough low end to not need bass. It's really crazy.
That's amazing.
And then you got into making digital mixing consoles that get used in film production. So all the major Hollywood blockbusters are mixed on these giant digital consoles. So he was already, he was very supportive of me getting into music. He would leave guitars lying around and not force me to do anything, but just, if I had an interest in picking something up, he'd kind of encourage it.
Yeah. And as far as learning to record, that would be very useful. Right?
Yeah, it was. He got me a Tascam 8-track little mini studio thing and taught me some of the basics. And so I used to record my own songs and things on there and got really into that kind of thing.
Yeah,
I was way more into it until computer recording came along. Because when Cubase came along and I had a little PC with that, I kind of thought, oh, now I don't have to record the whole song in one go. I could just record a verse part or a chorus part. And that actually kind of killed my creativity, because I would record these little chunks and then I couldn't figure out how to stick them together, and it became more of I was trying to be an audio engineer rather than a musician, and
Right.
I much preferred just recording to tape and having to like write a song, you know, as a complete entity.
Isn't it amazing how, just speaking to that, because as musicians, you kind of have to wear a lot of different hats. Having a home studio, learning to record, making videos, learning something like Final Cut, and really getting into video production. It's like, really, all we want to do is play drums, and then we wind up going down all of these other schools of learning because you're trying to do it all. And it sort of becomes, I over the pandemic, I worked with a lot of drummers, helping them get their live stream thing together. And, somebody like Weckl, he's so knowledgeable at everything. I mean, he's very good at engineering. He's very good at sound. He's very particular about every little thing. But, now I'm helping him learn how to live stream and how to connect video switchers. And he's getting frustrated, but he hung in there and did it. But I also worked with David Garibaldi, and he just was frustrated also, like, oh my God, I just want to play, and now I'm having to learn all this stuff. And we kind of do in this day and age. You kind of have to learn a little bit of everything. And then, over the pandemic, since I was helping drummers basically all over the world learn how to do this stuff, I was spending less and less time on my drum kit, which was getting very frustrating for me because, again, that's what we really want to be doing. Why am I stuck over here, doing all this technical stuff? So, yeah, it's pretty crazy.
That's funnily kind of the story behind Polynome is like you mentioned that I had those other bits of software, Octopus Sequencer and Rhythm Machine and Pyramid and things, which I'd written in a backend called Max MSP, which is, it's hard to explain what it is, but it's kind of a visual way of coding of like, you have a counter and you drag a little wire from the output of the counter to a button, and then you can kind of build these things in there, and that's what I built those in.
Well, how did you stumble upon that and just starting to build those things?
So I went to New York. Between tours, I was asking myself, what do I want to do with my time off? And the answer was I want to get drum lessons with my favorite drummers. So I went to New York for 10 days and got lessons with John Riley and Robbie Amin and Mike Clark, and like just one lesson with each of these different guys, Billy Ward. And it was Robbie Amin and Billy Ward that had me doing things like Robbie Amin would say, okay, here's a left foot clave groove, play this along with me. Right. And then he would play a fill, and then I had to mimic that fill and play it back. And then with Billy Ward, he'd have me play like a basic groove, and then he'd come back and he'd yell some like musical idea into my ear, and I had to kind of repeat that. And I thought, well, this is really fun because I'm not reading rhythms from a page, so it's exercising your kind of ability to hear something and play it back,
right,
rather than read it and play it back. And it's fresh ideas all the time. And I wanted to build something that would let me kind of replicate that in the practice room. So I was like, I want something that plays a bar of groove and then a bar of fill, and I can say which drums it should be on and whether it should mix up eighths and sixteenths or triplets or that kind of thing.
Now, but just quickly,
like, ideally,
did you think that because drum machines, you can kind of do stuff with drum machines, but you discovered the limitation of that, I suppose, right? Where you were like, wow.
I didn't really try it with drum machines, but it was the random generator thing that I wanted. I wanted to say, like, here's a bar of groove, and now generate a random rhythm played between different things, but maybe with something else going on. So the idea was you could program it so it would play a left foot clave groove, and then it would play just the left foot clave, and it would play some random 16th or 8th note rhythm between the toms and the snare over the top for a bar. And then on the repeat, it would play the same one. So it was like, and it would play as long as you wanted until you hit a key, and then it would generate a new fill. So it was like a rhythm generator. And so that's what I wanted to build. And on an iPad would have been great. I don't remember if iPads were out at the time. This would have been 2011 probably. Wow. So maybe early iPads. But an iPhone or iPad app would have been great, but I had no idea like where to even start with that. And I went to stay with a friend in London, and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, oh, you should check out Max MSP. You can do things like that, you know. And within an afternoon, I had like the core kind of, I'd played around with it and figured out like, oh, I can probably make something that vaguely does what I want in this software. And then I spent a few months like really trying to sort of get it to do what I wanted. And I don't even know how to open it and edit it anymore. But if you look at it, it's just all these lines across the screen, like a big spider web of things all joined up to other things. There's no coding at all. It's just cables, basically. It's very weird.
Wow.
But it worked. I mean, there's a thing in there you can drag on like a metronome thing that has 4 inputs that might be the, you know, the division and the tempo or something like that. And then an output will just send like a pulse out at that thing. So you don't have to build the metronome thing, that's built, but you cable that up to other things and have MIDI outputs and things. So I kind of built this machine, and so that was Rhythm Machine. That was the first thing that I made available, but it looks kind of, you know, doesn't look great because I was limited with the software that I was using. And then I made Octopus Sequencer because within Rhythm Machine, I'd made a step sequencer that you could program in things. And one of the cool elements of this metronome component was that you could set any rate from 1 to 32. So you could have quintuplets and septuplets in there. So I had this step sequencer where it could be counting by at whatever rate you wanted. So I thought, well, if I put 4 of those together, then I can get into doing some Virgil Donati stuff and have one that loops every 3/16 and one that loops every 5. And so I did that.
And by the
and
way,
then somebody emailed me and said, can you make this Octopus Sequencer thing play the table of time? And you couldn't, because you could only set, you know, you were like, you set it to quintuplets or 16th notes and that's it. So I thought, well, I could make something where you just typed in the numbers and it would play the table of time. And that was what Pyramid was.
right.
And then I had a student on my website who, in his email signature, I thanked him for signing up, and he's like, cool, I wanted to check out your breakdown of this solo or something. And in his email signature, it said that he worked for Pixar and lived in New York. And I was like, that's pretty cool. So I emailed him and I'm like, do you really work for Pixar? And he said, yeah. And he said, I also drum tech for Dave Weckl. So that was neat. And then he said, you should come and meet up next time you're in New York. And I was going to be touring like a few weeks later, starting off in New York. And it just so happened that the Brecker Brother reunion gig at the Blue Note was the day before our tour started. So I flew in a day early. He got me on the guest list and we kind of met there. And afterwards I showed him this Pyramid thing and I said, do you think you would be able to make this into an iPhone app? And he was learning to write iPhone apps because Dave wanted an iPhone app. So he said, yeah, I think I could do that. And so we kind of partnered, and he wrote I told him what it should do and how it should look, and he wrote it. And then I did the website and the marketing. And it was the first version was really basic. You just typed in like 2, 3, 4, 5, and it would play 8s and then triplets and then 16ths and then quintuplets, and then you could have it play those over a different voice. You could say play over a paradiddle or play over a single stroke roll. And then alongside that, there was another number that was anything from 1 to 32, and that didn't change. So that would be, you could have that be 16th notes, and then you could have all these different rates play against those 16th notes. So you could have the table of time against 16th notes, or the table of time against triplets, or whatever you wanted. It was quite, unique, because drummers think of metronomes as playing one tempo, one rate. So to have something that could switch even between eighths and triplets is useful to hear that, without having to program it into a sequencer. So that was the birth of Polynome. And then I moved down to London and had a practice space that I couldn't really shoot videos in, but I could practice, because the downside of recording drum videos all the time is every time I got a new idea for something to work on, I would think I should make this into a lesson. So I would make a lesson on it, edit the lesson, spend all my time doing that, and then never actually spend that much time practicing it myself.
Right.
When I moved to London, I had all this time to practice, so I started doing 4-hour practice sessions, which I'd never really done before, and that's that's the most I can manage. I can't do 8.
Yeah.
But I was actually working on stuff for me, and I thought I need to improve my timing. And I'd heard about this exercise of clapping and trying to bury the click for a minute. And I'd spoken to a few drummers who had really good time, and they would tell me that they would start every practice session just playing like quarter notes on the hi-hat to a click at various tempos just to try and really nail that in.
Right.
And so I thought, I want to make an app to track that, so I can say, what tempo is it? How long did I play it for? What date did I do it on? That kind of thing. And then I thought, well, Polynome knows the tempo. It knows how long it's been playing for. If I've got a preset in there, and you can save presets, I could name that preset, clapping practice. So all of that stuff's in there. Why have another app where I have to go and jot that down? Why not just have it log this stuff in like a practice log? So I communicated this desire to Lucas, and he said, that's a great idea, but I just got married, got a new job, moved across the country, and I don't have any downtime. And it was like a side project for him. And I was in the middle of a break from touring. I think I had like 3 months off, which I've been planning to spend practicing. And instead, I started watching iTunes University lectures on how to write iPhone apps. And I had the code base that he'd done, so I could see how it worked, but I didn't understand it. And I just spent basically the next 10 years doing that.
Wow.
The irony is that I wrote it to track my practice because I just started practicing more. And I ended up going down this rabbit hole and basically spending all my time coding and 0 time practicing.
Isn't that, that's kind of what I was saying before. It's like I think creative types have that tendency, right? Where it's like you get this idea and it's, I have to follow this. And then your first love, which is drumming, took a back seat, a little bit to it. Obviously you're still drumming, but it's like, yeah. But, this app is really the thing that spawned it was something that you wanted to use to get better at the craft, which is, I think that's why a lot of drum books get written is it's something that you're working on yourself, right? So,
yeah.
Man. So I just wanted
basically all the features in it are things that I wanted. So
right.
It's almost at the stage where it does what Rhythm Machine did. You can set it up to play a groove
right.
and then play a randomized rhythmic fill between different things and repeat that. So that it can kind of do that now. And that's what I was always sort of working towards. But it took different turns along the way. I have like a playlist feature in there, so you can run one preset into another.
Right.
And in the code base, a playlist is called a set list because I wrote it as a gigging drummer. It was like, I want presets that will be my count-offs for songs, and I want to add those to a set list. And then there's a feature where you can print the set list as a PDF, so you don't have to type it into Word, and it will calculate how long the set's going to be. So as you're adding songs, it will tell you like you're at 90 minutes. So that was because that's what I use on tour. It's like we've got an hour to play, so what songs should we play? Well, we'll go over if we play these ones. Let's take this one out. So really like niche features that were basically for me.
Yeah.
But then the set list side of things, I started to use to program in rudimental snare exercises. So I put some drumline samples in there, and there's practice pad samples in there, and you can program in really complex drumline things. And I think if you're in a drumline, it must be a real boon to have a metronome that can play precisely what it should be. So when you're practicing it, you can practice along with that. So now I use playlists mainly for programming in things like that. So it's evolved over the last 10 years, and it's always because, well, I want to be able to do this with it. So I'll write it.
I've used it just to create. I have some exercises in my hand technique workshop where, we're playing certain things and the rate keeps changing. So I call it rate exchange. So I made some programs on Polynome where it'll go from, having the grid go from quarters to dotted quarters to eighth note triplets to quarter note triplets to eighth notes, and it keeps changing based on where the exercise goes, which it's great for that. And that's just tapping into one of the most simple aspects of it. Do you want to share it? Do you want to bring it up on screen and we can look at it?
Sure, yeah. Let me see where it is.
and I'll bring your window big.
Share. You see it?
Yeah.
So we do have to be careful because it does an awful lot, and I do some live Q&A things with this sometimes, and I can talk for hours about it. And there's probably 3 hours worth of like diving into the features. So we should maybe just look at one or two.
Yeah. So maybe if I was somebody that was just getting the app, so what would be, something that you would want to show to somebody that's new to this, just to give a little idea of some of the things it can do. By the way, are those programmed in just your version of this?
No, this is in the default. So here, if I sort this by created, this is the defaults that come with it.
Cool. And
these ones with the little video monitor have videos. So getting started is like a video. You can watch a video, and there's video guide to using all of these different features. And then down the bottom here, you've got like an example that shows how you can use flams and diddles and things and accents, and how you can vary the swing. So you can have, triplet swing or like stretch it different amounts. Playing over the bar line examples, shift and randomize to randomize a melody or a rhythm. Conical, that was something that I added. So there's like conical syllables in there, and you can do all sorts of fun things with that.
Oh, nice.
So, and then there's some grooves. So I've got the funky drummer groove. And so with this, I've got 5% swing on this, and you can vary the swing there with this fader.
Ah, that's cool.
I don't know if it sounds like the audio is maybe glitching a little bit.
It's not on my end, but...
Okay. So, you can program in grooves. So I've got, a Billie Jean thing in here. Oh. Does that sound okay to you? It sounds really screwed up on my speaker.
No, it sounds okay, yeah.
Okay. So, there's some things in here that I literally just put in for me. There's a delay fader, which isn't an echo. It just delays the position of the sample. So you can, when I move this fader up here, it says delay 75% of a 16th note. So if I push this to the top, then this is delayed by 1/16th note. So all of the bass, the melodic idea is going to come a 16th note after the groove.
Oh, cool.
Okay. So you can use that if you put both of these in the middle, sequencer 1 and sequencer 2. So that's another thing here, is that you've got two sequences that are kind of independent and yet work together. So you can program whatever you want in here and something different in here. So with these faders both in the middle, both of these are now delayed by a 30-second note. But what it means is I can pull this fader and make the delay less. So I can pull the bass and the melody behind the drums, or I have it in front of the drums, and so you can hear what it sounds like if the drums are a little bit late. Or really early.
Wow.
It's a bit difficult to demo because for some reason the audio is all screwed up when I hear it.
Oh, and I'm hearing it clear. I mean, really clear.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So I've got some, I've got the Rosanna groove in here. And I've got When the Levee Breaks with a bit of a delay on.
Nice.
Sissy Strut. So, and you probably wouldn't really use it for that so much. I just put that in for fun, some kind of things. There's a Snarky Puppy vamp here.
1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Cool.
So you play along to that. There's the big numbers feature that a lot of people like, where it just
1, 2, 3,
shows you a count. If you're making YouTube videos, that's really handy.
Yeah.
There's a polyrhythm option to quickly create a polyrhythm. So if you want 5 against 3, for example, you get a 5 against 3.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
polyrhythm.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. Nice.
And you can have the voice counting on either side of that. And there's also a version of this polyrhythm where you can turn the grid on, and it will basically show you how to learn that polyrhythm. So now this is 5/3, but the way you get that is to play quintuplets and accent every third note. So here's your 5 with the accents and the 3 with the start of each group of quintuplets.
Oh, that's great. That's a great teaching tool as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's something, if I just create a new preset, this is a real drummer feature. Oops, Paradiddle Strokes. So here's how quickly you can enter a paradiddle. For example, you go in here and edit the pattern, and you've got this palette of rhythms here. So I'll just put in 4 beats of 16th notes, and I will tap underneath, and now I get, right and left hand and kick and hi-hat buttons. So I'll put in a paradiddle, and then I will tap above. This is where you can put in accents and diddles and drags and flams and things.
Nice.
So I'm going to accent every 4th note. So that's going to play an accent and then 3 rests, and we'll repeat it. So now you have a paradiddle. And I can change the sounds here to be pads.
Nice.
So now you've got a paradiddle played on a practice pad. And then if you're teaching someone about upstrokes, downstrokes, full strokes, that kind of thing, if you're working that out from a written out rhythm, you have to do quite a lot of mental work of going, okay, when's the next right hand stroke? What is it? What was the previous one? So should this be a full stroke or a downstroke or whatever? Down here, you could tap in Sequencer 2, tap on these 3 dots because it's a hidden drummer feature, and add a stroke guide. And that will put in the down, up, tap, tap strokes.
Oh, wow.
So this is your right hand on the top, and this is your left hand on the bottom. And let me slow the tempo right down.
Down, up, tap, tap, down, up, tap, tap, down, up,
Yeah,
tap,
that's
tap,
nice.
down, up, tap,
So it
tap,
reads
down,
out for
up.
you, and you can mute just the left hand or just the right hand. So a lot of drummer features in there.
Wait, when you drop the accents in, it would auto-generate the stroke sequence?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, so if I modify the accents here and accent every other note,
Right.
then it's no longer down, up, tap, tap. It's full up, down, tap, full up, down, tap.
Oh,
So
cool.
it does it based on that.
That's a great
So if you wanted
feature.
to accent every 3rd note of a paradiddle, you get into a bit of trouble because this would go over the bar line.
Yeah,
So you would have to put in 3 bars of 16ths.
right.
But now you should get what the stroke guide is for accenting every 3rd note of a paradiddle.
Down, tap, up, down, tap, up. Oh, cool. Very nice. Yeah, very
And then your
cool.
mixer down here, you can change the volume of whatever's assigned to the right hand and to the left hand, so you can hear
Down, tap,
just
up,
the right
down,
hand
up, tap,
part.
down, up, tap, full
I can
tap,
mute
tap,
the left hand
tap.
and right hand stroke guide. So you just hear the right hand part of that paradiddle or both hands. So all sorts of things like that. And then you've got everything that you play is logged in the practice log. So you can see here, Paradiddle Strokes was played for 14 seconds at 50 BPM on Monday, 18th of April at 5:20. So that's what I was talking about with logging that stuff. So then if you go into the practice log for everything, for example, I don't know what's in this particular demo version, but it says today I've practiced for 3 minutes. That's just in this demo. And the last time I practiced was 24 days ago, and that was for 7 minutes.
Right.
The total practice time I've ever logged on this simulator is 11 minutes over 24 days. So I've not used this one very much, but you can see charts for which days you played on, what presets you have practiced, and what tempos you've worked on. So when you've got a lot of stuff in there, it's really interesting to see, which tempos you don't do a lot of practice at and which you do all your, 120 is usually the spike because that's the default tempo. So, that's a really useful way to track what you're doing. And you can set goals in here. You can say, I want an open goal of, let's say, 4 minutes a day of practice. So you can set deadline goals and say, I want to do 100 hours by this date.
Right.
And it will tell you how much you need to do every day. But if you've got a goal like that, then when you come in here, this shows you how far you've got to reach your goal. So we've done 3 minutes of practice. So we're 81% complete for today.
Right.
So there's a lot of stuff.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's so well thought out. I mean, well, as you said, you spent many years developing, getting it to this point. Would you say that it definitely replaces all of the old apps that you had developed?
Yeah,
like
yes and no. I mean,
Octopus
Octopus Sequencer did things like this. This is like Octopus Sequencer, but with only 2 sequences that run in parallel. But you can get close to most things that you would want to have done in that. So if I do a new preset, so we've got these 2 sequences. So let's say up here, you can put in 1 rate, say 16th notes for just 1 bar. Whoops. And in this sequencer, you could put in quintuplets.
Right.
Okay, so you've got 16ths against quintuplets. And you can choose whatever sounds you want for those. But then on this grid here, you've got 2 lines of polyphony that you can have sounds on. So if I put a pad and then 3 rests, that is going to play a sound on this, but nothing on these 2 notes.
Okay.
So if I mute this sequencer, in fact, I should turn off the stroke guide. I don't know. Oh, okay. Yeah. So if I mute sequencer 2, so we're just listening to sequencer 1 here. You're hearing every 3rd 16th note, right?
Yep.
And then you can, on the second line, play a different pad sound every 5th 16th note. So that's a way of getting 3 against 5. And that will go over the bar line. And down here, you can do the same thing. So you can have 2 different things playing on a grid of quintuplets. And you're not just limited to pad sounds. If you click below here, you can choose from a keyboard, so you can put in melodies.
Oh, nice.
And you've got conical, so you can put in a whole bunch of different conical sounds and things. And you've also got a counting, so you can put in whatever numbers you want. Cool. But a very cool thing is if you can modify this rhythm by taking out certain notes, and it will automatically, give you a nice beamed version of how it should look.
Oh, cool.
So as a teaching tool, you can do this. Here you've got a rhythm. What should that sound like? You can tap on it and choose auto counting and choose to assign this to line 1, and it will put in the counting of that rhythm.
Wow.
So I have like classical pianists, concert level pianists who love this app for things like that, just to help them with the rhythmical elements of things. But it really is, like I say, it's scratching the surface of the things you can do with it. And you can create really fun. I think the idea was when I went to sit with the kit, I wanted to play and have fun. So if I remember I had a Virgil Donati VHS tape called Power Drumming, and he had a workout on there that gradually the tempo would increase, and then it would eventually hold at the highest tempo for a while. And that was fun, but I had to play along to the video to do that.
Right.
Whereas in Polynome, it's really easy to create a playlist that does that and goes through different tempos. Or, for example, let's make a playlist here. I'll create a new playlist. I'll call it Keith. I'll call it Krantz, because Wayne Krantz has a thing, his band with Keith Collock, where they'll play at one tempo and then they'll just change to a completely different tempo and then another completely different tempo. And it's fun to try and do that. So I'm going to add an item to this, which will just be a regular click. I'll just call it click. So 1 bar of click, right? Plays for 1 rep. I'm going to change this so it plays for 4 reps, just for the sake of brevity. And this is at 120 BPM. I'm going to make 9 copies of this. So we'll hit the plus and duplicate the item 8 times. So now, I was going to do 9, whatever. We've got this click will play for 4 reps, and then this one 4 reps, this one 4 reps. Now I can set this one to be 50 BPM. And if I want this to be a ramp from 50 up to, say, 200, I can select the bottom one and set that to be 200. And then instead of manually going and doing all the ones in between, I can just select all of these and go to my tempo, rep, and timer options. Tempo options, I can ramp the tempo.
Wow.
So now we've got 50 BPM for 4 bars, and then it'll go to 68. This is too slow. So if I want to set these all to 1 rep instead of 4, I can go to the bottom and click on this playlist time row, choose set all reps to 1.
Oh, wow.
So now we'll get 1 rep of each tempo. Then it goes to 68, then it goes to 87. Okay, so then if you want to do a Wayne Krantz practice thing, you can tap on the playlist name and shuffle the playlist, and now your tempos are in a random order. So you know what your minimum and maximum are, but they're in a random tempo. So you can just sit and play and say you want to do 5 minutes at every tempo. Or, this is a cool thing, say you've got 20 minutes to practice, and all you want to do is work on these tempos for an even amount of time. If you go down to the bottom of this playlist, it says playlist time, first loop is 20 seconds. And it's going to loop infinitely, so that would last forever. You can tap on this playlist time row and say, set the first loop time even. And that just means that everything will be played for the same length, whatever you do. So you go set first loop time even, and you say, I've got 20 minutes to practice, or 20 minutes, 20 seconds, hit done. Now it's going to play each one for 2 minutes, 15 seconds, and the whole thing's going to take you 20 minutes. So you've just kind of saved time on having to stop, change the tempo, write stuff down that you've done, you know.
You know, I thought the app synced was cool, but this is like on a whole nother level. It's almost like, I mean, and do you keep updating this or as you get ideas or?
Oh yeah. If you go to the help menu in here,
right?
What's new? So this is like every time I release things, like the dates on these are year, month, and then release. So 1st of April, not 1st of April, the first release in April. And I had something in February, a couple of things in January, a couple of things, you know, back then. And each one of these tells you all of the things that are new in the app. So I added a toggle for compound time signatures in the last version, and an option to return to where you were in a playlist. You know, jump back to November last year. I added an option that you could start and stop it from your Apple Watch.
Wow.
September, adding a click quickly and some small changes. But you know, I have a huge list of things I want to add. It just takes a long time.
Right.
But it's really solid because I've used it on hundreds of gigs. So it's designed, if you want to use it on a gig, to be really robust, really quick to pull up whatever songs you want. Like, for example, let's say we wanted to make a playlist to play tonight at a gig from these songs, then you can hit this multi-select button. Say we're going to play Come Together, Good Times, Bad Times, Manic Depression, Walk This Way, and Memphis Soul Stew. Then you just go Actions, Add Presets to a Playlist. Let's call it Tonight Gig. So now they're ready to go in here. And these can be set to play just 1 bar of the groove. This is what I like to do. Instead of having just a click, I like to have the groove that I've got to play in case I haven't played it for a while as a reminder.
Right.
So it reminds you what Come Together goes like. And then I would have to just change the playlist settings so that they don't all play one after another. So it will play it. So I probably wouldn't have an 8-bar groove, but you get the idea. And then it moves on to the next one and it's ready to go.
Nice.
And then you can tap on the name and you can do a PDF of the playlist, and it will give you a nicely formatted playlist to print that you can air print or email to the venue or whatever.
Oh my God.
And yeah, there's a ton of stuff, but it's all really heavily road tested, so it's a very stable app.
Oh my
And
goodness.
let me see if I've got one more example in here. Well, we've got, for example, the 40 Essential Rudiments. So you've got the rudiment on the left, the name on the right, and you can work on your rudiments.
Wow, that's amazing.
So I'll stop there because otherwise I could talk for many hours.
Let me just see if there's questions in the chat because wow, it's pretty crazy. Let's see. Oh, that was that was Peter earlier. That was like, Joe, your app kicks ass. That was Peter Retzlaff. So Bob wants to know, on what platform are you running the app on a demo on a Mac? Well, I know for myself, I have it on my iPhone, and and so the cool thing is, and it also is on my iPad because it's in the cloud, but it's here, and so Bob, you can get this on your iPhone, your iPad. Is there a Mac version?
Yes, there is, but it's basically Apple on. It's a universal binary, so it works on iPhone or iPad or Mac, but not on Android or Windows. And there's many reasons why. One of them is that it took me 12 years to get this far, and if I was starting from scratch, it would be a long time before anything was even on there. There's too many hurdles. So
if I buy it, if I've bought this for iPhone, and it's how many versions, how many devices can I have this on? Can I have it on
as many as you want? It's like you can install it for free on your Mac.
Okay.
You can airdrop presets between the things, so you can create something on your Mac and airdrop it to your phone.
Oh, that's cool.
Or vice versa.
Right. Are you able to share like a setting with, let's say, a student? You write a playlist, you can share it with them?
Yeah, that's a big thing that I wanted to do with it. You could create a homework assignment that was, work on this, and this, and you could do it in a playlist, and you could say this for 5 minutes, this for 6 minutes, this is exactly what you got to work on.
Oh my God.
You can airdrop it to them or upload it and send them a link so they can just click on a link to install it, and then they can use it to practice. They can, if I just quickly share this again. So for example, let's say you just said to them like, okay, your homework is to work on all of these rudiments. Let's say that just single stroke roll, single stroke 7, just like these 3 or 4 things, right? So I'll delete the rest. So this is the homework, and they are to play for 10 minutes. So I'll do that. I'll do that set loop time thing, set it to 10 minutes, whatever, 10 minutes, 26 seconds. So 2 minutes, 30 seconds on each of these. Then you would just tap on this and choose share playlist, and you can share to another user, and that will let you airdrop it to them if they're in the room with you, or you can upload to Polynome. And you can add it to the public library so that anybody can go and browse and find it, or you can just share a link, which will work for 30 days. And then that will give you a little pop-up. So if you went now to polynome.net/u/9fkm, which you can copy and send it to them, that would allow them to download this. So in fact, if I go to Safari and paste in that link, paste in that link, then it takes them to a download page. Sometimes the site is a little slow, but it will take them to a download page with a button, and they just tap on it and it will open it directly in the app.
Oh, wow.
And then the cool thing is, for a student, they can be playing on this, because one of the big things, I think, if you're teaching someone and they go home and they work on it and they come across a problem and then they've forgotten it by the time they're at the next lesson. So they can work on this for like 2 minutes, 30 seconds. They play along to this. They can mute the pattern and just have a click, so they can see what they're supposed to play, but they're just playing to a click, for example. And then let's say that, you know, they stop now and they go, oh, I can't go this fast. And they want to let you know that they had trouble with the left hand tensing up. So here's the little practice log, most recent event logged, 16 seconds at 80 BPM. You can tap on this note, left hand C, I spell seizing up. Okay, so now they've made a note against that specific practice event. And so when they come for the next lesson, you'll be able to look at their practice log, and you can look at the practice log just for this playlist. And you can see exactly what events they've done. So you'll be able to see if they've practiced as much as they said they did. And if there's any events that they've got notes, you'll be able to view those notes and then deal with, you know, what, and you can do a practice report that will give you only events with notes, for example, that you could print out that shows what they were having issues with and things like that.
Oh my God. It's really incredible. And the fact that you keep thinking of things and that you're bringing more things to the table is totally insane. I think it would take a little bit of time to get your head wrapped around it, but you have a really good help menu and you've made videos to explain stuff. I mean, it's really so well thought out.
There's a lot of a lot of video help, a lot of things on the YouTube channel where it's like a 45-minute like getting started guide to show you, you know, how to use it in a band or how to use it for practicing, or
right.
So there's a lot to learn, but really there's only a few tools within it, as in like, okay, you can set a ramp on a tempo and you can reorder things and you can perform actions on items in playlists, but then how you utilize those to create your own routines like is limitless. But most things, it's like you click on it, click on this, and it's like you can go to the playlist manager, you can rename the playlist, you can change the sounds, you can shuffle it up, all self-explanatory.
Yeah.
If you tap on here, you get some options. You can go to the sound picker, you can randomize this rhythm or the sounds, you can add auto counting. It's like the things are there and it's quite self-explanatory. And if there's something that isn't, like if you go to edit pattern and you were to click on this reset off button, what's that? It tells you a description of what each of these things does. And if you see a little eye in a circle anywhere, you can view a web page that gives you like detailed explanations of things. So the help is kind of built into the app.
Yeah. Oh man, it's really incredible. I do have to download this onto my Mac because for teaching, I'm teaching online a lot of the time, and I'll be able to share this with students, you know, in real time, and also for live streaming. It's just incredible, man. Oh my God. It's just, I'm blown away. I mean, I have it and I just haven't even scratched the surface yet. So you're opening my eyes to a lot of the features that I didn't even realize were there. So
there's things in it that I forget exist. Sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, it does that. That's neat.
And so like, as far as the playlist thing, that's so great that you're able to put grooves in your for your count offs. Mm-hmm. Because how many times have you gone to play a tune and you're like, oh man, I know the tempo because it's telling me right here, but I don't remember how this goes at all.
Well, my playlist for the Wishbone gig would have a lot of things were just 2-bar clicks of the groove. Right. Not because I couldn't remember it, but because I felt like it helped me get a feel for the tempo better if I hear like a shuffle groove played at that tempo rather than just a click, you know?
Yeah.
And then some of them have notes. You can add notes to songs. So it's like if there's a new song that we've not done very much, I'll have the structure of the song written in there so I can just read it straight off that while I'm playing. I even on one gig, I had my iPad or iPhone set up on stage and we were going on in 10 minutes. So it was sitting there waiting for me, right? And we're in the dressing room and the singer said, oh, we're going to do this song tonight that everybody else knew about that I didn't. So I had 10 minutes. I listened to the song. I jotted some notes down on my iPad, I think. And then I snuck on stage and airdropped the new updated set list that had this new song with the written structure of the notes, and then played the gig and, you know, winged it that way.
Oh, that's great. Oh man.
And there's a feature in there that was a request of Chris Reeves, who plays with Tom Morello and I can't remember what she's called. Travis Barker's just started playing a lot of gigs with her, but he
Avril?
did a lot of gigs in Vegas where the guitarist would count the song off, but he wanted to play to a click. So I put a feature in there where you can tap like 4 times, and on the 4th one it will start the metronome going at the tempo that you tapped in.
Nice.
So that's really useful if you want a click, but you don't know what the tempo is going to be until somebody else has started that song.
Oh, sweet. That's cool. Were you talking about Avril Lavigne, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Very cool. Yeah, pretty recently I had Rodney Howard on, who is her drummer for a long time. Yeah, I'll have to turn Rodney onto this onto the app. I would think that a lot of Broadway drummers would like this app, you know.
Yeah, I think there's some good situations for it.
Yeah.
Like you can, for example, you could program in a cue sheet so that you've got a click and you have you have Siri basically read out the next thing when there's a 1-bar lead up to it, so it can say like chorus 3, 4, and then the next bit starts. So you can have cues like that in, which for that kind of thing, I know people who do use it like that, and maybe MDs you could use it, rather than doing that in a sequencer. I think it depends on whether they already have something in place that someone else is utilizing.
Yeah.
But I do have like guys in musicals. I've got some classical musicians. I mean, I put features in there that, you can put in a time signature of 4/5, which a lot of drummers wouldn't even know what that was. Like very infrequently used, and you can do nested tuplet stuff in there, like things that are really on the verge of being useless, apart from to about 3 people. But they asked me, can it do this? And so I was like, well, I guess it could. And it did in the next version.
And what's great
I had to learn what 4/5 was.
Right. I think also just there's no other metronome that I've seen or app like this. Even, I mentioned Sync before because I was using that for a little while. But you couldn't go past non-tuplets. So there's no 10s, 11s. None of that stuff is in there. So I was immediately disappointed, going, can't put the whole table of time in.
Yeah, you can go up to I think 64th notes and anything in between 1 and 64.
That's amazing. That's insane.
Over any rate, so you could do 63rd notes over over 5 dotted eighths or something like that, if you had the desire.
If you had the desire.
You can do things that you can't write. It can play things that it doesn't know how to notate. It'll just show up blank, but it will play it.
Wow. Okay. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's really amazing. I almost feel bad that, we didn't go over more drumming stuff, but the app is so incredible. I can't see any drummer looking at this and going, I don't need that. There's just so much it can do. It's just incredible. I definitely want to implement it in my hand technique workshop thing more because, just being able to create polyrhythms quickly and layered stuff, rate changes, all that kind of stuff. And the randomizing thing is got me intrigued. So I definitely have to dig into that.
Yeah. Well, if you ever need help with anything, just let me know and I'm happy to jump on a call and
my God,
go through some features.
And so the app, of course, is in the App Store. And also if, if you're I always get in trouble for this, but if you're a Windows guy, you need to change anyway over to a Mac. So just do it. And then you'll be able to get all of this stuff.
Well, people ask me, is it available on Android? And I say, well, no, but you could pick up a secondhand iPhone 6S for under $100, which is cheaper than Dr. Beat. And you could use this and any other apps from the App Store that you need. It's you can do a lot with a cheap secondhand iOS device.
Yeah. And there is 2 versions of the app, right? So, really, I highly recommend get the Pro version of the app, but there's a basic version also, right?
Yeah, but the basic version is upgradable. So if you get it and then you want the Pro features, you can upgrade later.
Right. Okay. Oh, that's very cool. So I don't have a lot of time left because I have, but I do want to ask you just some quick things on the way out.
Okay.
Which I always call my speed round questions. But these are just first reactions. I'm going to name drummers, and you just give me your first reactions to each guy. And I think we covered like first gig and all that stuff, so I'm going to skip down to the drummer list. But if anybody wants to get in touch with you about the app, like if they're stuck, can they should they do it through the app, or is there a way to contact you if they want to talk to you?
Yeah,
about
there's
the
help in the app. If you search the help document,
Right.
you can type, what you're looking for, and then it says if you can't find an answer, then you ask a question, and I'll get that in my. There's email addresses, joe@polynome.net or joe@joecrabtree.com.
Okay.
I'm very easily reachable and very keen that people should have a good experience with this because I know it's difficult to learn. So I've put as much useful content out there as I can, but I'm always happy to help people solve any issues.
All right, cool. All right, so let's see. I'll just name a couple of guys.
Okay.
So first reactions, let's see. David Garibaldi.
Love his playing. Was not really big into Tower of Power. Didn't really know it, but I know he's like the guy, and the things of his that I've learned I've really enjoyed. But it's not like one of my main guys starting out because it was later that I came to that.
Got you. It's funny, like I mentioned some guys sometimes that drummers aren't even aware of. Like I've mentioned Ash Sohn to people, and they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "Man, why are you guys you're hiding under a rock? What's going on?"
Yeah.
But let's see. Steve Gadd, who, by the way, I just saw Friday night playing with the
I saw a clip
thing.
from that you were talking about, and love Steve Gadd. Like, can't. I would say about Steve Gadd, when I was 14 and I watched the Buddy Rich Memorial with, I think it was Gadd and Chambers and Weckl. No, I don't remember what the combination was. It was Gadd and was it Vinny and Weckl?
It was Vinny, Weckl, and Gadd.
Weckl.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when I watched it, I was like, "Oh man, Steve Gadd sucks. Like, look at how slow he's playing, and how and there's Vinny stuff and the Weckl stuff. I was like, they're the guys." And many years later, when I had a drum solo to do on the Wishbone gigs, and I started thinking, what makes a good drum solo? What do I like in a drum solo? I went and revisited that thing, and I was like, Gadd is the only guy who's playing musically. I mean, what Vinny and Weckl is doing is amazing, but it was the Gadd bits that I wanted to steal because I'm like, it's just so great.
Yeah. I mean, and what's interesting is those guys, I mean, back in those days, it was just so much technical prowess. But I even think like, when you watch Dave now, his playing has evolved and continues to evolve so much. Yeah. He's such a musical player, man. And he was so fun to watch on Friday night as well. By the way, back to Garibaldi for a second. He's got a new book called DG's Notebook, David Garibaldi's Notebook. And he does all this cool stuff where, I mean, he's just doing it in real time, but he's taking a pattern and then he's shifting it on the grid forwards and backwards. And it's really fun. And that's something.
That's a feature in the app. Yeah, you could put the hi-hat on line 1 and then the snare on line 2 and the kick, and you could shift just the hi-hat part to the right or shift the whole thing to the right. It's built for that.
Yeah, that's amazing. So like you could basically program DG's Notebook into your app and make Polynome play this stuff.
Steve Gadd's book, the Gaddiments. Somebody's programmed all of that in. So
really,
if you're working on that and you want to hear how something should sound or have like something to play along to check your accuracy, you can just get that from the public library.
Nice. So well, we might as well do it. So Vinny, what's your first reaction whenever you hear somebody say Vinny Colaiuta?
Like the best. Yeah. Vinny's always been the one for me, like, because he's always fresh. He's always like pushing the boundaries of everything that you can do. His groove and time is amazing. Like, Vinny's like probably my number one.
It's so funny because he really can do anything. And what about Simon Phillips? I'm a huge Simon fan, but how about you?
Yeah, I love Simon. His like Protocol album, Force Majeure, like I don't know if that was the first one that he had out, but there's a solo on there, One for CJ, which is one of my favorite drum solos. And what I love about Simon is he's very much got his own style and sound that he always has, you know, and he's a great groover. Like a friend of mine who's really an air drummer but loves drummers. He only recently discovered Simon Phillips, and his comment was he's tight and loose at the same time. And I'm like, that's such a great kind of description.
Yeah.
Because he's like really on it, but it's just such a great organic sounding, you know, groove that he's got.
Yeah, his feel is just so wonderful too. Like seeing him early on when he first joined Toto, and just being like, wow, man, he was really the right guy to come into that gig, man. Oh my God. How about we'll just do one more. How about my buddy James Gadsden?
So James Gadsden's like Bill Withers' drummer, right?
Yeah.
He's on those things. Like I'm familiar with the songs more than him as a drummer, but I have a preset in my Polynome that's like James Gadsden groove, just because I was on a plane. I was like, yeah, this is like, what is it about this that's so groovy? Like, great feel drummer, but not one of the ones that I was like really heavily into growing up, because I didn't really. If it wasn't on a DCI music video, I probably didn't know him as a drummer.
Well, it took me, I mean, into my adult years to understand the importance of a guy like Gadsden. Like when I was a kid, same thing. I was just looking at the guys I saw on videotapes and that were really impressive. But Gadsden's feel is so incredible. And then, you know, kind of went down a rabbit hole of really looking at his playing, and the shuffle on Donald Fagen's Nightfly record. Why am I forgetting the tune? My brain doesn't work today. But but on that record, man, see now I gotta look. Where is it? Yeah, it's on that tune, the Nightfly. So yeah, that shuffle that's on there, that's Gadsden playing, and it's like so.
I'll check that out.
Like so simple. No fills really. Just the groove is just so happening, man. So good.
I think until you start recording yourself and trying to, like, you know, get stuff down, you don't realize how hard it is to do. I remember I had the Steve Jordan DVD when it came out. Right. And the first time I watched it, I just thought, this guy's crap. I could do that, you know, like not knowing, by the way, that Steve Jordan was like played some really awesome kind of advanced sounding stuff before he simplified everything. I've seen clips of him on like The Late Show or something, just like tearing it up on a huge kit, and like didn't know that side of him, you know. Almost like Phil with like the early Genesis stuff and the Brand X and like what he did, and then what he did for Genesis, and like simply made like accessible drumming that was still like amazing.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But I think until I tried to play some of those Steve Jordan groups and record it and listen back, and I'm like, okay, so it's not that easy. Same with Gad, you know, on his video where he's playing just like a samba thing. And then I tried to do that. And that to me is way harder than playing like crazy polyrhythmic stuff, because it's so bare and open, and it's all about, does it groove? Does it feel good? And it's so hard to get that.
Yeah, that's the key right there, is when you record it and you listen back and you're like, man, that doesn't feel at all the way the way he makes it feel. Yeah, it's really incredible. Man. And by the way, Brian Blade, who did a lot of the playing on Friday night, and Antonio Sanchez is always amazing, but Brian Blade's playing was just really, really interesting and unique. And it was kind of a funny thing. This is totally off on a tangent, but he played a couple tunes, and then he started to walk off stage, and Christian McBride is like, no, Brian, you're on this one too. And then he tried to walk off stage. He's like, no, you're still on. And he's like, then he started introducing him as the hardest working man in show business, Brian Blade, because he played like a good portion of that tribute show to Chick. But then the end of the night, the last, like, it was a 4-hour concert. The last hour was the electric band, and Weckl was out playing with Patitucci and, you know, that lineup.
Yeah.
And it was just killing, just totally killing. So you and I have a lot of the same drummers in mind, you know?
Yeah,
it's really beautiful. Man, thank you so much for hanging today. I mean, it's been so super fun, and really enlightening about the app and digging into your career a bit. I think I say this, you know, I always want everybody to come back, but hopefully we'll do it again sometime. We'll do like a part 2.
Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, super fun hang. Everybody go check out the Polynome app in the App Store, and also check out Joe's lesson platform, which is awesome, and he's done some really wonderful breakdowns of things that we know and love as drummers, and he may open your eyes to some new things, right? There's a lot of video content. And I also put up your regular website so you can see apps and lessons and up there as well. So all that stuff's in the description of the video. Thank you to all the people in the chat, including Steve Balgoyan, because I missed you before, but Steve Balgoyan was in there, and Bob Sears was in there today. And anything you have coming up that you want to mention, by the way?
Nothing.
Just the app.
Just Polynome stuff. That's it. I'm just going to be working on.
Yeah,
on
so
that,
you're focused.
basically.
And congrats on the new baby.
Thank you.
know-
I can hear her outside. I think it's dinner time.
There you go. And again, you know, thank you for being so generous with your time. And everybody tune in on Monday for Lenny White at 7 p.m. next week on Monday. By the way, this video will be replaying on Facebook, so everybody can watch this later today. And of course, it will be archived on YouTube as well. Joe Crabtree, been so fun hanging with you. And
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next time. Take care, everybody.